Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Radio Dayz, a podcast radio program that delves into the world of terrestrial radio. Its DJs and on-air personality, and you, all fans of radio as a medium. Here's your host, Ron.
Hello and welcome to Radio Dayz The Podcast. You can hear this podcast on Buzzsprout, as well as all major podcast platforms like Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. You can also watch this via YouTube and at ronrobinsonstudios.com. In this episode, which is brought to you by Team 71 Mortgage Group and Radio Dayz The Movie, got a special episode today, and we'll get that in a second. I'll tell you what we're going to do. But first, I do want to give a quick update on the progress of my documentary about the history of terrestrial radio. After 9 years, this is all but complete. In fact, I've decided to edit two different productions. One is a 5-part docuseries, and one is a condensed 2-hour movie. Early feedback of both products has been very positive. My last hurdle in production is to raise $16,000 that Getty Images is charging for the copyrights to some of the critical images that I need to tell this story. I just launched a GoFundMe page in hopes of raising some of the necessary funds. And if you'd like to help out and donate and contribute, please click the link that I've put in the description of this podcast. You can also, just so you know, if you do help, you do get a mention in the credits of both the docuseries and in the movie. If you are not able to contribute, my ask is that you share my GoFundMe page with as many people as possible within your sphere of influence. Thank you, and thank you. Now on with the program. You may or may not know, but every radio station cluster has its own strange identity and has its own strange way of doing things. And in a lot of cases, some great, crazy stories come from things that happen behind the scenes at radio stations. For me, that concept was pushed to the extremes during my 3-year stint in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And if you've listened to this podcast in the past, you've likely heard me made reference to my time in Fort Smith, Arkansas at KMAG. However, I feel I haven't really scratched the surface on how many absolutely nutty things went on there and while I was in Arkansas. In fact, there were times that I questioned my own common sense. And to prove that it wasn't just me, on today's episode, I've invited two of my former co-workers from that time. In fact, all three of us were what the folks from Arkansas would call Yankees. So today's episode is called 3 Yankees in Arkansas. And to discuss this, let me bring in Corey Winfield, who was raised in Southwest Michigan, and Jeff O'Keefe, a.k.a. Alex Hart, originally from Indiana. Jeff O'Keefe, Corey Winfield, how are you guys doing? Thanks for joining me today. Oh, we lost Jeff. Oh. All right, well, I was going to start with Jeff, but the show must go on. We're recording, Corey. How are you? Thanks for coming on, man.
No, things are good, man. I did want to ask you were mentioning the movie and, you know, the sponsorship. Like, how much mad cheddar would I have to get or give to get like a little shout out at the end?
$20 I think is the minimum. The minimum, but people have been giving hundreds, which is very $100 here, $100 there. Right now it's at $1,000, which I'm very thankful for. But $20 is good, man. Whatever anybody can afford. Every little bit helps. I'm not picky. If you can afford $20, please throw $20 at you. I'll put you a mention in the credits. Absolutely.
See, I run a nonprofit, and I am horrible about asking people for money.
I am too.
And,
I hate it.
You know, doing the radio thing, like that's the salesperson job, you know, and doing that for 20 years is like, nope. And I feel so uncomfortable. And people try to tell me, oh, you're not really asking them for money. You're asking them to be a part of something. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. At the end of the day, it's like I'm asking them for money. And when money is exchanged and expectations, that's why like on our podcast, I don't take any money from anybody because expectations. And plus I want to say people suck and I can do that. But yeah, so I'm going to hire you, Ron.
Well, while we're waiting for Jeff to come back, you mentioned it, to 217 Recovery. If anybody's watched this podcast, you've seen me wear the 217 Recovery hat. Talk a little bit about your podcast and your organization, what you're doing now, Corey.
Yeah, so the reason why I mentioned that was because the podcast was something that was a way that I could keep sober and something that I could do to keep sober. Some people go to meetings, but yeah, so I started the podcast and it kept me sober, so.
Obviously, I mentioned that today's episode is about our time in Arkansas, and I am one who likes to start at the beginning. Of all three of us, while we were there, the 3 Yankees in Arkansas. Jeff, you were there first. So let's start with you, Jeff. Talk about how you came to move from the Midwest to Arkansas. Talk about your moving to Arkansas.
Well, it's funny. We have a guy who is kind of the nexus of the whole thing. You could say his name. I'm not going to bring anybody else into mixed company or anything. But I used to work with our boss in South Bend. And
Ralph Cherry.
Yes, yeah. Ralph.
You knew it was going to be Corey who released that, right?
Yeah, I got a good story for you about that. But anyway,
just one.
I had been working in Chicago at Shadow Metro Westwood 1. I was doing traffic and news for some of the biggest stations, WGN, WBBM, big stations, and it was a great gig. It was you're working with 50, 60 different people, and just people think traffic and news is kind of boring and whatnot, but it's not. You really get it kind of gets monotonous, but the people are radio people, so they're it's personality and everything. But that being said, you get a lot of downtime as well. So I just happened to be looking online, and I saw this ad for a station in Fort Smith. And I looked and I said, I've never thought about Arkansas before. But then I read the name of the guy who posted it, and I said, well, there can't be another knucklehead out there with that name. So I said, you know what? So I just went and I, sent him an email. I wasn't interested in going to Arkansas, but I just said I wanted to shoot, just say, hey, how's it going, man? Couple of emails, couple of phone conversations turned into, so when are you coming down? I said, I didn't know we were that tight, but yeah, I can come down to visit. Sure, whatever. He's like, no, to work. And I said, listen, dude, I said, Arkansas isn't even on my top 5 places that I'm not going to live. I said, I know nothing about Arkansas other than Bill Clinton and the 94 Razorbacks basketball team. That's all I know. He's like, oh, no, it's great. You'll love it. It's great. I went down there, and I had never seen that much green in my entire life. When you come down from Fayetteville into the river valley, you're 150 feet above the ground on those bridges, and there's nothing but meth trailers and trees and all kinds of stuff everywhere. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience, but at the same time, it was 3.5 years of a working vacation, because no traffic, cost of living was awesome. And then, you guys came in.
Well, before we bring in Corey, because Corey was the second victim to fall, well, I'll go to Fort Smith. I do want to ask you, because I will, full disclosure, obviously not one of my favorite people when I worked there. However, in the last several years, I have become friendly with Ralph Cherry. He lives, I think he lives in Louisiana. I know he was living in New Orleans for a while. But there's for all three of us, our bane was Ralph Cherry, and we'll talk a little bit about that here coming up. But before Corey got there, Jeff, what were some of your early impressions of not just Arkansas, but that building specifically? Because, as I mentioned at the top, every radio station I've worked at is quirky, but this was a whole nother level.
Well, it was the strangest part about it was, even as the radio as a medium started to shift in the early 2000s, you were still used to having multiple people in the building. And, you had live air talent every day part. And to walk into that building and be the only person that was local on your radio station, yet let's preach live and local, so it was, there was a little bit of a culture shock, so to speak. And you didn't, talking to people over email and phone calls about, what they're doing with their day or how their shift works. It was just, that was a tough thing to get used to, but luckily with that lack of people in the building, there was probably a little bit more camaraderie, I guess, because we were all in the same boat.
So you were at like the top 40 type of hot AC station, yeah? That's the kind of station.
Right.
And what was the call letters again?
That was KZBB,
Yeah.
B98.
And then along came Corey Winfield. Talk about the genesis of how you came to work at Fort Smith at the sister station of the B. You worked at Big Dog, if I'm not mistaken. It was 95.9. Is that correct? How did that come to be?
I was doing some stuff in Dallas, a lot of drinking, and it got to the point where it was like, all right, the drinking has to stop. And I said, no, it doesn't. I can just leave. And I wanted to get into management too, so I just blamed it all on that person, and it's all that person's fault. And I'm going to do management because I did see the writing on the wall when I was in Dallas, because when I was doing nights there, the guy that worked for Clear Channel at the time, now iHeartMedia, he was in Houston but recording nights in Dallas, and I was like, oh no, because at that time I worked for Cumulus, and I was like, Cumulus is like just a shittier version of Clear Channel, like they're going to be doing this soon, so I need to make myself an asset and become in some kind of management. So I put out some tapes, and Fort Smith, Arkansas was one of them. And Ralph Cherry had got a hold of me and was like, hey man, are you interested? And meantime, there was this station in Las Vegas that got a hold of me, and it was for a morning show. And just looking at the guy and knowing someone who lived in Vegas, I thought, if I go to Vegas, I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to use drugs until I die. And the studio is going to smell like hot dogs, because the dude that was like the host, like he just looked like he smelled like hot dogs. So, and then, not knowing Ralph Cherry or anything about Arkansas, which I think, to all of us, and Ron, I'm sorry I lied to you about it, but, Jeff and I coming into it, like we didn't know about it. And we were like, okay, sure. And me being in Texas, I'm like, well, Texas touches Arkansas. Got to be similar. Maybe some parts, but nothing that I ever lived in. And so it was a very, very much a culture shock to me. And when I drove down, I went down the same road, because I went back to Michigan first, and then I came back because I like driving apparently. And yeah, driving through, and I remember they told me they would reimburse me for my gas. So I was thinking like, all right, I'm going to stop right before I get to Fort Smith, fill it up. That way I can have some gas for the week, because I was broke as hell. So I stop off, I want to say it was Chester, someplace like that in the middle of nowhere, like a city named Chester. Like, what are we going to call it? Well, Chester found it, so let's call it Chester, Arkansas. That sounds good. I don't know. Well, my dog was named Chester. Let's name that city Chester. So anyway, that's the kind of place it was. And I pulled off, and you know how you get those signs on the interstate, you're driving on the freeway and it says gas. I'm like, all right, gas. So I get off, and then I see the sign when you finally get up the stop sign, right before then, it's like gas 5 miles that way. I was like, you gotta be kidding. So I drive out there, and I roll up, and I kid you not, there's a dude outside in his overalls. He's got his man titties hanging out, and his dog is sitting next to him. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I'm wearing my Tony Romo jersey. And I'm like, is this going to be safe? I'm like, maybe, I don't know. Get out, and it's one of those old pumps that goes click, 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 that has those numbers that like flop over. And I'm looking at it, almost like, what is this piece of equipment here? And the guy's like, if you need some help with that, you can go inside, and I was like, oh, hell no, he did not, and that's just what he sounded like. And I went inside to make sure that they took credit cards first, because that was like, ding, ding, ding. I don't want to be doing stuff in the back alley to pay for my gas, because I think they would have allowed that there. So I was like, that was the first, that was the first time I thought, where the hell am I at? What am I doing here? And I hope it gets better. And as I drove into Fort Smith, I was like, oh my God.
What was your first impression of Ralph Cherry?
Okay. Oh man. I'd say all over the place. Yeah. And I think they wanted me to show up. Like, when I got there, I was like, I need beer. And I drank like maybe, I don't know, it was over a 12-pack, but I was slamming beers that night. And Ralph's like, yeah, come in for the meeting tomorrow. And I'm like, So I think I was late to that, and Ralph's like calling me at the hotel, and he's like, "Hey, you coming in?" I'm like, "Sure." So I had to go in, and I know I could feel the alcohol coming out of my pores that next day. So I knew they were all smelling me, because I was like, "Oh my God, what am I at? What am I doing here?"
An alcoholic and Ralph Cherry, what could go wrong? You did lie to me, Corey, and so let me set up my situation. What led me to Arkansas is I was working a lot of hours at WJR covering a high-profile murder case in Southeast Michigan. I was also running the ribbon boards at Comerica Park, and I was teaching at Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts. I went from doing all that in 2008, the economy took a dive. I went to like part-time at JR, and that's all I had for income. So I was looking for work, and Corey, you've been on the show before. I've worked with you first time in Benton Harbor, at Michigan. Then you also got me a gig in Kalamazoo, which I was there for a cup of coffee, which if you want to hear why I was let go of there, you can listen to that podcast as well. But you did lie to me because I had worked at Corey with Corey at two different stations. He said, come to Arkansas. And I don't know if you know this, Jeff, but I was supposed to get hired, and then they hired someone else. And the person that they hired didn't show up. So Ralph called me and said, are you coming? I'm like, what do you mean, are you coming? Because I got ghosted. Like, I thought, Corey's like, it's good. You're going to get hired. You're going to get hired. And then I got ghosted by Ralph and Corey. I don't know if Corey ghosted me, but I was ghosted. So I was like, I guess I didn't get that job. So I was about ready to take a job as a waiter at a steakhouse in Nashville just to pay the bills when Corey said, hey, the person they hired didn't show up. You're in now. And I was like, well, let's see what happened. And I remember the first exposure, Ralph Cherry, I got there, he took me to the Golden Corral for lunch. And
because it was free.
Because it was free, right? And laid out how it was. He brought me in as his associate program director at the country station KMAG to work with a guy named Tommy.
Street.
I forgot Tommy's last name.
Street.
Was it Tommy Street? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Fake one.
so I came in and it was another culture shock. You had talked about live and local earlier, Jeff. I mean, I was shocked because they wanted me to record. I think it was I don't think it was a 4-hour show. I want to say it was a 5-hour show. I could be mistaken about that, but I think I was doing a 5-hour shift. And it was all recorded. Even my contests were recorded. Like it was so like, this is a whole new world for me. This isn't radio. I'm taping, and it's just not what radio was. And so that was my first, okay, this is a little strange. But to me, I chalked that up to just a sign of the times. However, things were about to get interesting. Because now all three of us are here in Fort Smith, Arkansas. As I mentioned, 3 Yankees in Arkansas. For me, I couldn't get used to people calling me Ryan. My name's not Ryan. It's Ron. Get it right there, Hick Billy. And so I remember somebody that was, before we get to the radio station, I remember being approached by somebody that said, you know the difference between a Yankee, a damn Yankee, and a goddamn Yankee? And I was like, no, dude, tell me. And he says, someone comes down here to live. And I said, well, what's a goddamn Yankee? A Yankee that comes down here and breeds our women. And I was like, whoa, I'm not in Kansas anymore. It was like...
Well, you did say that you were going to come in and spray this whole tap.
He did.
What are you talking about? Like,
He did.
Elaborate, Jeff. What are you talking about? I have no idea, recollection of what you're...
No, you stood right...
Even did the machine gun motion.
Right,
I remember that now.
Yes, you stood right there in the middle of the pit, and you said, "I am going to sprint." Corey knows.
It's true.
Didn't you guys get the memo of things we're not supposed to talk about
You
today?
said we could talk about anything.
You know what, man? Yeah. I still remember the time you hung me out to dry. I was dating my wife. And well, she's my wife now. But we walked into the radio station, and you were the only one there. And you looked at me and you said, "Well, who's this one?" And I said, "Dude, don't." I said, so here, this is just like, yes, this is 15 years later of getting you payback.
I don't remember the honest to God. I'm not saying I didn't do it. I just don't remember it.
Fair enough. Take your plausible deniability.
So we're all voice now. Were I was voice tracking? Were you guys voice tracking your shows too?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. Feet up on the counter.
It's okay. Now let's talk about the first exposure to Ralph Cherry rules. We'll call them Ralph Cherry rules. You cannot go into the studio of another DJ. For me, every radio station I've worked at, I've counted on collaboration. If I come up with an idea, I've always went to Corey or anybody I was working with, throw it off them, and 9 times out of 10, I would use their line. To me, collaboration was so key about doing what I was doing. So to not be able to walk into another studio when the doors, do you guys understand that? Because it never made sense to me.
I kind of get it. But I mean, again, if you have talented people in the building, things come up like, oh my gosh, I got to do this now. Let me run over there and wait till it's on air. Like, hey man, you got a minute. You know, you're not going to come in and be like, hey buddy, did you watch the game last night? You know, it's pretty cool, man. All right. Yeah. You know, you're not going to have that kind of conversation, but at the same time, I hated when people would come bust in my studio and just do that dumb shit, you know? So I kind of get it, but in Fort Smith, it was way different because we had recorded our shows. We were done recording our shows within the first 30 minutes of being there in the morning. And then it's just sit around and wait. So that was way different. Like that's something.
See, you guys, it was a little bit different for me because I would, for, I don't know, probably the last 7 or 8 months that I was there, I was also double timing on KWHN on the talk station because Gary and or that Brian guy, that weirdo. We'll get to him too. But between either one of them, I was filling in and became part of that. So I was there at 5 o'clock in the morning every day, and so by the time 8:30, 9 o'clock rolled around, I had already recorded my midday show. I was basically done for the day. So if you went in there and the lights were out, that's because I was sleeping on the floor. Right. Well, I mean, the fact that, it was completely, the fact that it was completely canned was just baffling to me. And I mean, even when we would do, you guys had been there, even when you went to go do a remote broadcast, how many times did you go to the casino and rattle off 6 breaks in a row and then just sit there and watch TV in the casino for the rest of the time? You know what I'm saying? It was awful. Some aspects of it were just almost archaic as to how it was done. And, even if you had a remote at a car dealership or something like that, you were still doing it 20 minutes ahead of where it was going to be. And eventually they got to the point where they're even using Apple software to just, talk directly to the machine. So you didn't even have to have somebody behind the board. It was so, yeah, it's what it's gone to nowadays almost. And it was kind of the precursor to it. But it was also not what we got into doing this business for,
Corey, same question. What were some of the initial things you were like, I can't believe this is real?
Just, recording everything was a bit much. I mean, everything. That was something that threw me off. Jeff mentioned the remotes. Those were weird, but I get it. I mean, sometimes, and even before I was there, if we had to grab a manager of a place or something, we could record that and do that, but still give me the freedom to go live and, to drop an F-bomb or something, like give me that room to hang myself, man. Like that's what I really wanted. That's what made radio for me. Just the, one of the things though, that did hit me though later on, and I'll bring that up, is when I was at a remote and I was at a car dealership and I was like, why are we here like every month? Like this just doesn't make any sense. You guys aren't selling any cars. We got to drive. It was the middle of Poto, Oklahoma, which it wasn't a very fun drive for us, and it was like, oh Jesus, going to Oklahoma today, which Poto's a cool city, I guess. But at the dealership, the guys explained to me why they're having these remotes, which again, if you want to really break it down, makes no sense either. But he said, we're having the remotes so that families can come get free hot dogs. I said, well, why don't you just, yeah. Well, yeah, have a radio station at your car dealership so we can give away free hot dogs to the poor people. Why don't you just give away free hot dogs to the poor people? You don't need the radio station. Well, they see the radio station and they know there's going to be food. Okay. Like, and there was obviously some truth to that. And as I look over, I see this family that had come down from the mountain or hills or wherever they came from, and he's giving them like 6-7 hot dogs. And I'm like, wow, that is kind of sad, but I don't know. It was just like the area. And then in Fort Smith, I used to give their, on the radio, I used to give their school district, the North Side, hell because it would snow. I'm using quotation marks. And they would close every other school but that one. And I was like, are they stupid? Like, why aren't they closed? Everybody else is closed. And then I got to find out why. It was because they have a lot of kids with free lunches. They get free lunches. And if they weren't open, them kids would eat. And especially if it was on the weekend, they might go 3 days without eating. And I'm like, what? And that's when I realized like the poverty level there.
Yes.
Anyway.
A couple things struck me about Fort Smith. First off, it's okay, Corey. You can't always be funny 100% of the time.
You're a real downer, dude. I did not get on this thing. Just sit here and.
I was shocked at the gallows. Like
changed.
Yeah, he has changed, hasn't he, Jeff? Right? He's chilled a lot.
Right.
You want to talk about my stuff? You should ask Corey about some of the crap he pulled while we worked in Benton Harbor. All right, I digress. But I want to talk about Fort Smith. If anybody's seen the movie True Grit. That's based on Fort Smith, Arkansas. The Hanging Judge Parker is infamous. The John Wayne movie, and I think Jeff Bridges remade it a couple of years. It's been 20 years now, but the gallows behind the courthouses are still up. They don't hang people anymore, but it's just there as a reminder. It says, hey, Yankees won't come down here and break the law. We're going to hang you. We're going to hang you good. But I do want to say a couple things about the radio station that blew my mind. Is first off, my contest. Stop it, Corey. My contest was, I wanted to call it the K-Mag Conundrum. And Dave told me that I couldn't call it that because people didn't know what conundrum meant. And I was like, well, it sounds good with K-Mag. And that we went round and round around. I ended up winning, and we ended up calling it the K-Mag Conundrum. But the thing that really struck me is how lazy our sales department was. It was crazy. I remember having Taylor Swift tickets to see a big night in Nashville and trying to organize a flight and hotel, and when after finally getting them to finally do something with that, they put me at a John Deere tractor place to give away Taylor Swift tickets. How many teenage girls hang out at the John Deere traffic place? I mean, it was just come back to remotes. We were put in remotes where no one cared. No one came out that was cared that there was a Corey. Stop it! I'm not going to tell you again. Don't make me stop this car. Weird things happen in and outside of the building. Agree, disagree? Take it away, Jeff.
Well, the parking lot was awesome. The parking lot there was great because it was like we were in high school again. Because you of course you had to go outside to smoke cigarettes, which it honestly almost everybody did. But you go out because they had benches out there. It was a nice little smoke hole, and then. I don't know. I'm going to take half credit for creating the sensation that was wall ball. Right. Well, Corey and I would go out because of course basically once April hit and it was 90 degrees with 115% humidity, you could go out and burn some back fat pretty quick.
My back fat's burning.
Yep. So we go out there and it was just basically a racquetball. You bounce the ball, and I think the scoring system was. I don't even know if there really was a scoring system to it, but we would go out and a couple times a day burn some back fat. Then we started playing wiffle ball, which was awesome. And what was it? We were all basically threatened to get fired, and. What's his name? Paul. He went to bat for all of us, and how do we repay him? By going out into the parking lot and playing wiffle ball. So, but yeah, the parking lot. The parking lot was awesome.
Yeah. Well, to give you some insight, it was, I think the studios that we were all in was like an old power company facility, right? Am I a phone company or something?
Yeah, it was a utility company, so they had a drive-through where you could go and make payments and everything. And
one of the things that Corey did while he was at Big Dog, and Corey did a lot of bits that he would have us, be a part of. But I remember the most infamous thing is you got involved with some ghost hunters. Talk about that experience, because you brought ghost hunters into our facility and put some recording equipment, and talk about how that came to be and what we found out.
Yeah, how that came to be, and then we'll move into Brian talk, because I can't wait to get into this. I remember it was the day, it was after the tornado in Joplin, when I guess somebody there, it was an unmanned station, so the FCC got involved and how come you guys weren't sending this out, this warning and this EAS stuff? So we're going to punish everybody. At least that's what we were told. It might have been just a Clear Channel thing, because it was Clear Channel at that time. They didn't make the flip to iHeart yet. So we're told all Clear Channel radio stations have to have somebody manned at all times. So they tell us, oh yeah, you got to start picking up, I think it was 12-hour or 8-hour shift. It was something ridiculous where you just had to sit on the weekend, just go in there and sit. Watch TV, just sit. Ron, you brought your PlayStation in. Well, you played during the week. You didn't care. Ron used to be in there playing some baseball. I know. So there was one day where I was just sitting in there. It was a Saturday, and you came to do a remote or something. And I remember you walked in my studio, and you were just like, dude, I just heard something talking to me. And I was like, whatever, dude. I don't believe in ghost thing. I think it's joke. It's stupid. And I said often on the air, that's the biggest scam of a job. I'm a ghost hunter where you don't have to produce anything. Well, what'd you get? Nothing. What'd you get? Oh, here, let me. Oh, and they all say, get out. Come on, bro. Every ghost says, get out. I'd be like, yo, man, this is awesome.
But you were watching a lot of ghost hunters at the time, though. I know you were watching those shows because they were very popular. A lot of people were.
I did, but I was very cynical of them. I just thought they were a joke, because I wanted them to show me a freaking ghost, and they never would. So I was really skeptical, and I wanted one just to say something
that's not how I remember it. Is that how you remember it, Jeff? I think he's rewriting the history books. Jeff, tell me that you remember it differently than what Corey's saying.
No. Keep going. This is great. Keep digging that hole.
Yeah, I was even on air saying, I want a ghost to whisper in my ear, hey, I'm going to spray the River Valley. But they didn't. They just would get out. So anyway, you come in and say some ghost is whispering to you in your ear, and I was like, whatever, dude. And then you came back in my studio and you're like, my keys are in the middle of the floor. You threw my keys on the floor. I was like, no, I didn't throw your keys on the floor. It's like, you're trying to.
That happened, bro.
Nah, it didn't happen, And then so that's something. I didn't put the keys there, but the keys were in the middle, and I thought Ryan's just messing with me, And so I was like, let's turn on the microphone in the production room and turn up the mic real loud and leave for an hour. And we did. And we came back and we heard something. We couldn't make it out, but it was something. And so I called the paranormal people, and it was the RVPRI, the River Valley Paranormal Investigation people team.
And they came out to the radio station, right?
Yeah, they did.
They worked hard on that.
And they had this.
Worked pretty hard on it for someone who doesn't believe it's true, right? There, Jeff, right?
So I was helping Ron out with this, he was a little scared. So then I got in touch with them. They came and they checked out the studio, the whole station, and they brought their equipment. And I remember when we arrived there on a Saturday night at 10:30 at night, we come across the live-in, also known as Brian, with a Y. Brian Harris. I'm Brian Harris. I have a knife in my pocket. That's what he always would say. He would try to cut you with his little pocket knife. I was like, bro, you need to calm down. Go back to your tent somewhere. But no, he seriously lived in a tent or a camper, or would just move it around the woods or something. But when it was too hot, or I don't know, he felt like it, he'd just come to the radio station. So I remember his feet up at his desk area. The lights are all out, and we come in, and he looks at us like we just walked into his front door. What are you guys doing here? Was his question, instead of us going, what are you doing here, dude? We picked this time because nobody's going to be here. And he just kind of felt like, all right, then I'll drive around. How long are you guys going to be? We're like, all right, man, just give us a couple hours. So he did, and there was one camera that was on a tripod, and the tripod, it would either go up or down, the camera. And when they reviewed the evidence, somebody was trying to move it to the right and to the left. So they were like, but other than that, we couldn't really tell you if it's haunted or not, but we've never had that happen to our cameras before. But then later, Kendra was walking down the hall, and she was behind me, and like something like grabbed my shirt, and it was really weird. And when stuff like that started to happen to me, I would just try to figure out why. I'm like, maybe I snagged it on something. But Kendra like flipped out, ran out, and she's like, I'm not ever going to be here alone. And she's like, that was creepy. It looked like someone's finger pulled your shirt back. And that's what it felt like. So, and then we found like old papers from there, and it was a old Indian burial ground, it looks like. No, I don't know if that's true, but I wouldn't put it past the electric company to do something like that. That's very disrespectful. Not that all electric companies are disrespectful, but OG&E probably. No, they are. They are very disrespectful.
You mentioned Brian earlier. What's your recollection of Brian from the AM station there?
Well, first, one of the weirdest things that they had replaced a satellite on the top of the building, and Brian had to have it so he could take it out to his property. And his property was somewhere near Chester, and where in the middle of nowhere, where they write their manifestos. And see, I timed that well enough to get a spit take from Corey. That's what I was looking at. That's what I was looking for. But no, that dude. So Alan and I were up there pulling this satellite dish off the roof, and Brian had to have it. He put it in that, what did he have, like that white S10 truck? Yes, and I think the artwork that is flashing into Corey's mind here right now, because that truck was always dirty, and we would always draw inappropriate pictures on the tailgate so he could drive around schools and stuff like that. We were actual children when we worked there. We were actually, but no, he wanted that he wanted that satellite dish to collect water in it, and I said, "You're going to collect water? What do you want to? You want to take a bath?" And he says, no. He says, it attracts the wildlife, so I'll get, some deer and some whatever. I said, I don't know about all that, man, but, that's what. But that dude was weird. He would sleep in that one office that was in the middle that nobody ever went into, that all the files were in and everything like that. He would sleep in there because that was the coldest office in the building.
Now, there's two things that I remember even to this day. One is, I'm going to say two words, and both of you are going to either smile or laugh. Arkansas face. Talk to me about Arkansas face, Corey. What is Arkansas face?
Well, let me describe it for you here. It's a face that I kept seeing all over in Arkansas. And it's like a round pumpkin face almost. And I made a demotivational, like they have motivational posters that you can buy at the store, look online. But I made a demotivational poster, like the opposite, and I hung that up, and I just put that at my desk. People would walk by, and I'm like, yeah. And so we'd see people, I'm like, oh man, she got a case, I got a case, the Arkansas face, and we would always kind of make those references, and and there was a lot of Arkansas face down there. Even my neighbor, she was like proud that she did not have Arkansas face, and she still brings it up to this day. Still don't have Arkansas face, and I said, not yet, sweetie. You just give it 5 more years. That means about 5 more kids. So once you get up to like 10 kids, you'll have Arkansas face. Trust me.
Another things that had to wait around for 5 years because you see them all over the country. But you, me, Jeff, Corey, all three of us experienced the genesis of the electronic wheelchair. In fact, Corey once made a gift gave it all of us at Christmas time, a calendar, and every month had a different electric wheelchair that we took pictures. It became a thing. Now keep in mind, you see them everywhere now. But in 2008, 2009, they were relatively, the only place you would see them is in Arkansas, and we saw them everywhere. Enough to make a couple years worth of calendars. Talk about the genesis of learning about the electric wheelchair and the new era that was being brought in, and you see it everywhere now. It's crazy how many people drive around in those electric wheelchairs.
Well, in Arkansas, they do things a little different. Like there's like common sense, there's rules, there's laws, there's norms in society. But in Arkansas, there's none of that. The norm is to not be normal. The norm is why not? That's what I want to do. So wheelchairs, I've seen them. I've seen electric wheelchairs in grocery stores. I've seen they're all over. But in Fort Smith, they drive them on the road like a car with a license plate on it. Yes, they will go through the drive-through, not the bank. Yeah, well, maybe the bank after that, or maybe the bank then they will hit the McDonald's.
Oh, no. I did see a bank. See a bank.
So it's just weird to me. I'm like, what the hell? And then Ron comes too, and it's like Ron, and we start taking pictures. So I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Like this guy is like, we're passing this guy on the road. I'm taking a picture, like he's next to us, and I don't even know if you use your turning signal to like make the pass move around him, but it was just the weirdest thing. So then Ron and I'll tell the story about when we kind of looked at each other eye to eye and realized we had a problem. We're chasing this guy down, like down some backside streets. And this guy's like running from us, man. And we chase him. Then we get into this Family Dollar parking lot, and he didn't have anywhere to go. So he goes behind the building, and Ron and I jump out, and we're going to get a picture. And then we're just like, wait a minute. Like, that's when it hit us. Like, this dude's running from us. Like, he saw us. Like, we saw him. It's like, oh, let's get him. We thought we were going to lynch him or something. Like, let's get him. Go that way. And I'm all pointing out the window, like yelling Yankee stuff. Like, that guy went over there. Like, let's get him real good. And pulling in, and we just looked at each other and we're like, man, that's too far. I'm like, this dude's scared for his life, and like, what are we doing? Like, this has gone too far. And I think that's when I kind of like pumped the brakes on the electric wheelchair stuff, because that was too far. It was way too far. Somebody could have got hurt.
Jeff, are you getting a theme here that this guy remembers shit differently than we do? Are you getting that yet?
Like my mother.
I
come on, Corey.
That's exactly how I have Mr. Spray in the River Valley.
I want to delve deeper into this, because to hear you talk, like, Corey, you went through the effort to take these pictures, print them out, and make calendars. What you're saying now doesn't even add up.
I told you.
You were the first through the door. Oh, there's an electric wheelchair. Get a picture. As I'm listening to these stories, I don't know why these people didn't like us Yankees. Have no clue.
I know, Ron. We're a mess. We're chasing people down alleys trying to get a picture.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard Corey say we've gone too far. If anything, he's like, we need to go farther. Like,
I think Corey's repenting for his past sins. I think he's repenting for his past transgressions.
I've been over 4.5 years now. It's a different life I live, but we still like to have fun. And I do bring up, and I want to go back to what Jeff said, something about the car art, because I didn't realize at the time what a great artist I was. And, I was really good. And at the time, I didn't even know, ask Picasso. Well, we can't because he's not around, but during his time, he probably thought, I might. But now people are like, wow, you're so great. And Jeff will send me every year on the anniversary of the penis hood because it snowed a couple of years there, and it was good snow. And I noticed that Jeff was missing a hood ornament, so I made him a nice penis hood ornament, and with the little nuts and everything. I put him on there, bam. And Jeff was like, he put one on mine too, and so we cruise around like.
Didn't you also send out a Christmas card with you on the commode, like one time taking a dump? Didn't you send that as a Christmas?
No. That was a promotion. That was a promotional
Corey's
thing.
Christmas gift.
That was a website promotional picture. Because I was lucky enough to take that one.
But I did send out his Christmas card.
I said, did you?
Autographed
That's fantastic. I said, I was like, you know what? You got to put the package a little lower because your balls are hanging out.
They were a little.
That's right. There was two eras of our stay in Arkansas, because we had the supervision when we started. Ralph Cherry was our boss, but while we were there, Ralph got fired and his bosses got fired. So at some point in that time, we were all left to our own autonomy, and our bosses were in Fayetteville. So that created a whole new dynamic. But before we go on to that dynamic, I'd be remiss because I've talked about it on this podcast, but I think it's worth telling. It's one of my favorite stories of all things that have happened to me in Arkansas. It's one of the things I look back on and laugh. And if you want a lesson in loyalty and friendship, you will get it from this story, my friend. Real quick backdrop. I was associate program director with a guy named Tommy Street. We talked about him earlier. And we had this meeting in the conference room where everybody, all the department heads would meet. I want to say it was every Tuesday, but I forgot. And Tommy, when you'd come to these meetings, you would express what you needed to talk about. It was just like, okay, everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what's going on at the different radio stations. And I had my thing, and I don't remember what I was going to talk about, but I wasn't paying attention when Tommy was talking. And Tommy went off and kind of complained that he was having to do too much production work and that he wasn't going to do any more commercials with two people. So don't even ask him. He wasn't going to do it. I didn't hear any of this. After the meeting, I saw that I had production in my box, and it called for two people. And I saw Tommy down the hall, and I said, hey, Tommy, I got a commercial that needs two people. Can you help me out? The guy went off, read me the riot act, got in my face. I let him go off, and then I retorted. And at the end of my retort, I said, and then, Tommy, you can go fuck yourself. My exact words. Our HR person was a very nice Christian woman. I forget her name. What was her name, Jeff?
Alice.
Very good Christian woman. Wanted to hear, because me and Tommy's argument was loud enough for everybody to hear. Now, Tommy was already on thin ice because he had FUs for everybody at the meeting. So our bosses didn't want anything to do with him. But this, I think, escapade caused I think they were trying to use it as an excuse to let him go. But what happened was the HR, Alice, asked everybody to send her an email of the account of what had happened. And I told them what happened. I wrote from my perspective, and at the end of my email, I said, and then I told Tommy to go fuck himself. Jeff, I don't know what Corey wrote, but Jeff, share with the viewers what you told Alice in your email.
Well, I felt it was Alice was a beautiful lady. Absolutely, she was just so very nice. Well, that's because she wasn't from Arkansas. So she was such a beautiful lady, and she was like the station mom, right? She just took care of everybody, and it was just, gosh, she was a great lady. I felt uncomfortable sending the language over a corporate email server. I'm still that to this day. But I felt it was inappropriate to send that type of language across a corporate email server, and on top of the fact that it just made you look bad. So I found a creative way to say, go fuck yourself. And that being said, Ron told Tommy to go do something that was physically impossible for Tommy to do.
That's a buddy. That's a buddy, man.
You know,
that's someone who's looking out for you.
Well, I you know what? Any way I can help.
Yeah. Jeff showed me his letter, and I was like, that's good, dude. And I'm laughing my ass off. And I'm like, and I left everything about Ron doing bad stuff off. Like, that stuff never happened, you know? And then we're like, Ron, yeah, we got you, dude. What'd you? And he's like, well, I wrote on there, I told Tommy to go fuck himself. And we're like, dude, now, like, I could look like a complete liar. Like, I wasn't even in the same room. You know, at least Jeff's like, okay, I get that. And they're like, this Corey guy, he's definitely a Yankee. They're all covering for each other. But yeah, that was classic.
All right, so I mentioned earlier there was two different eras while we were at Arkansas. One was with the management in the building, Ralph, and then we were kind of left alone, and we didn't really know what was happening. So the bosses would come out once a week, and that turned into once a month. They would come in from Fayetteville. Talk to me from your perspective, Jeff, how you think things changed in the building. Was it better or was it different? Because I contend it might not have been the best thing to leave us all autonomous like that.
Well, you know, you knew at that point it was the stepchild, that they didn't care. Like, if Clear Channel iHeart was going to sell some stations, they would throw Fort Smith in as an extra. Oh, you don't want to pay for it? No problem. We're going to get rid of it. So knowing that there was no priority, knowing that there was no real focus on it, it starts to seep into your attitude a little bit. I can remember there was, tie everything to the website. You need as many new website hits as you can get, right? Social media was just starting to come, out of fruition, but starting to be really popular, blah, blah, blah. So there's a story about Jay-Z on the website. I'm doing my 90s flashback show. So I play Jay-Z, Can I Get A? Corey's already laughing. Of course, tad bit off the format. Understand. However, as the song ends and I'm going into my stop set, I tie everything back to the Jay-Z story that's on the web. Go to kzbb.com, blah, 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 blah. That kind of thing. So you said we could say what we wanted, Ron. So Dave, the underling to the henchman, is actually coming. Thank you. Actually, I just came up with that right now. Dave's coming down off the hill, and the first thing he doesn't even come in. He just, immediately launches into me about playing a song that's not in the format, blah, blah, blah. He says, the break and everything, really great, because you tied it back to the break you had. You played this song, but then you had a really good break and blah, blah. I said, so let me get this straight. Let's take a half step back here, homeboy. Great content, wrong song. And he just kind of looks at me, and I said, yeah, okay, have a great day. And, you guys were on good terms with them. I was never, ever really on good terms with the boys from up north.
What led to you leaving? You got let go, right? You were the first of us to leave. In the environment that we were at, their point was to make your station as automated as possible. You want to have very little. You don't want anything to go wrong. You don't want to miss anything because, God forbid, you miss a spot. But you don't want any headaches. Well, I had gotten to the point where, they gave us laptops when we're on vacation, right? So you can log into the automation system, whatever. I could go away and I could go back to Indiana for 10 days, never open that laptop once, and not miss a beat. So the station was fully automated exactly the way they wanted it to. I was getting there at 5 every morning, leaving 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock. They pulled me into the office one day and sat me down and said, Jeff, you're just kind of mailing this in. And I said, this is how you want it. You want it so it doesn't have to be touched. This is exactly what it is. I said, now this is the easy point. All the hard work has been passed. That's all done. I said, now it's just keeping it updated and fresh. I don't know. I think it was a matter of, let's be honest, you guys were making a hell of a lot more money there than I was, but I think they just wanted to bring in somebody slightly cheaper. And, I don't know. Corey, you and I had talked about it afterwards, but the guy they brought down from Fayetteville or whatever, I don't even know. It's been so long. But that was kind of it for me. At that point, it's like, you can do everything. You can have, great numbers. I can't compete in a town like Fort Smith. You can't compete with two huge country stations, two huge sticks, a couple of rock stations, and say, I get into the top 5, I get into the top 3, I'm good, whatever. I had good day part numbers, and whatever. But after getting cut for, either a budgetary reason or just some dumbass reason for the lad, that was it, man. That was the day I retired, basically. And you brought up a great point that I want to expand on is we were all you said we were kids. We were all at a point in our career where we were like, we wanted to apply what we had learned at our previous radio stations, and we all wanted to make our station number one. Now, I obviously had an advantage over both of you being a country station in Fort Smith, Arkansas. However, that was what I think drove us. And because we were so handcuffed, it really, I think, frustrated us and created some situations that probably weren't ideal. Would you agree with that, Corey?
Yeah, and especially, when the guy, we call them the boys from Fayetteville are coming down. I remember we went to lunch and we come back and like Ralph had been fired and Paul had been fired, and we were like, oh my God. And they're like, hey, you're program directors now. And we're like, okay, cool, thanks. Now I can do what I want. fired? Nope. And it was like, oh, now I'm doing extra work for no pay. And then it was, like I realized later it's the model. When Danae, the promotions lady, when she got fired, and they kind of replaced her, I think at the same time with somebody else. I don't remember exactly, but
that was about when Kendra came in.
Yeah, but then they had Kendra doing KMAC stuff too, so they're like, oh, we can kind of slide this in here, and but that's their way. Like if somebody leaves, they don't really technically hire a new body to fill that role. They just try to figure out who else in the building can take that role, which worked out for me financially. And I was on the Eagle in Fayetteville doing afternoon drive, and David said something about Little Rock and stuff, and I was like, all right, sweet. But at the end of it, it was just too much. I was learning like the website stuff. I was learning. They made me promotions director, which I didn't know how to do. And Dave was like, "Yeah, you'll figure it out." And so then I'm like, "Hey, there's this promotion." Like Ron was saying, like we kind of take from our old stations. Like we did great promotion in Benton Harbor back when it was a good station. Now it's horrible. But back then they did this Christmas wish thing and give somebody a car, right? Oh, WIRX, that whole Midwest family is just horrible. But I mean, there might be one person I like, but the rest of them, maybe two. I'm just saying, no, it is what it is, man. Not a great man.
The opinions expressed by Corey Winfield do not necessarily match the opinions of the people who do this produced show. Anyway, go on. I just want to put that disclaimer in there.
Okay. So, but they do. Ron agrees. But the way they did stuff back in the day was way different. So they did this car giveaway, and I was like, hey man, we can do this. So the sales guy was like, hey, we got this car dealerships looking for some added value stuff. I was like, man, here you go. Do this Christmas Make-A-Wish thing or whatever. Not Make-A-Wish, but give away a car. Have them give away a car. And we'll put the promo together on the air. People be crying. It'll be over Christmas. Oh, it's a feel-good thing. And so we did that, and we were probably like a month into it. That's when Dave catches wind of it, and he calls me, and he'd call, and he'd be like, "Ah, shit, it's Dave." Like you ever get a call from your boss, you're always like that. You're like, "Ah, shit." And like, "Hey, Dave. Hey, what's up, man?" That's how he would say hello to you every time. "Hey, what's up, man?" "I don't know, Dave. What you tell me what's up, man." You're giving away a car?" No. No, the dealerships give away the car, but we're running a promotion where they're giving away a car. Can't fucking do that, man. And I was like, wait, what? And he had told me before, he was like, just run the promotion. And I'm like, Dave, I'm just running the promotion, man, like you told me, and he's like, we got to get our lawyers involved. I'm like, Dave, we're not giving away the car. The dealership is. We're just telling the story. Well, we got to put a stop to this right now. And he got all mad. And then like 2 weeks after he pauses the promotion, comes back to me. He's like, oh, the lawyers looked at it. Yeah, since we're not giving away the car, that's fine. I'm like, dude, that's what I said, man. So those moments would frustrate the hell out of me because at one end of it, he's like, that's what I pay you for, is what he told me one time too. I'm like, hey, Dave, what's your idea about this and this and this and this? Well, that's what I pay you for. Oh, okay, I'll make them decisions. And then you start making them decisions, and then it's like, whoa, can't fucking do that. I'm like, well, you just told me last week that you're fucking paying me to do that. And I'm so confused. So that was very, very frustrating. And again, I don't know what level Dave had on his end, because as Alex calls them, the henchmen, the lead one, I think that you would refer to, he ended up doing some shady shit and got fired. And I don't think that him and Dave were as buddy as a lot of people thought. I think Dave felt relieved when that happened. And not only did it help him kind of step up to a different level too, but it kind of cleared the way for him, because obviously there was some shady shit going on and Dave didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And so I think that was a little freeing for him, and he became a little more laxed after that. But still, the corporate, that's when the corporate stuff really took over. And one of my favorite stories though is when they went from Clear Channel to Clear Channel Media and Entertainment. Were you guys around for that, or were you guys already gone? This was so beautiful. Like everybody's like, man, I want a raise. We're here, you have me do 80 other things now, still getting paid the same. I want a raise. Well, we don't have it in the budget. We don't have any money. Everybody, okay, now we're changing names. Clear Channel Media and Entertainment. Here's your new business cards, put new signage on the building. And then like a month later, wait, hold on. We're going to change the name. iHeartMedia. And we're like, what the fuck? And so I did the math. Millions of dollars they wasted on business cards, signage. And I'm just like going, and this is a company at that time, I think there were only 16 billion in debt. Now it's probably like 30 or 40, and then the guy who's running it with the MTV guy, you know, like he took over and he had to pay $5 million to get in the company. We were kind of laughing. We're like, man, there must be some good money to steal around here, because why would you pay $5 million to jump on a ship that's sinking? Like, it just doesn't make sense, you know? So there's some whatever, but it just kind of like really opened that corporate side of things, and you have to play X amount of promos from them. You know, it's like, yeah,
and I never liked that, because I'm glad I wasn't around for that, Corey, because that made to this day makes no sense. If you turn into one of those stations, those jocks are telling you to go somewhere else. They're not telling you to listen to your show. They're sending you somewhere else, and that's not how.
And we had to talk about it, and they were like, "Here's what we want you to say," you know, and it's like, "Oh, go build your own station now, commercial free." Imagine the salesperson now go sell the station. Well, your jock just said to go build a station that's commercial free, like.
No. I listen, from time to time. I do, because I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so I'm about an hour and 45 minutes from Fort Smith. From time to time, I do have to go back there. I don't listen to the radio anymore, but of course, for nostalgia, I will turn on the iHeart stations just to make myself giggle. They actually run ads now where you, as a business owner, can go to the website and build your own commercial. You don't even have to deal with a salesperson anymore. You can go and build a spot for 217 Recovery, Corey. Go right ahead. Mm-hmm. It's no big deal.
You can air it in whatever market you want.
Yep, exactly.
It's pretty sweet. You know, so again, the salespeople are getting burned too. But back then, though, we were telling people, build your own custom station, push people to the web. And then Steve Knoll, who replaced you, Ron, him and I became very good friends. And Steve was like this. Oh, he was from Chicago, too, so that was great. Or Minnesota, but then he went to Chicago. So he was a Midwest guy and Yankee. And he would look at this and he'd just shake his head, because he was like older and just had enough. He had been in the industry long enough. And he'd just be at his desk, you know, playing his Angry Birds, listening to the call, the country call. I think it was the dude from Grand Rapids or whoever. And that was one of the funniest moments of my time working there too, is he's sitting there, he's on his Angry Birds, not paying attention. And they told people to mute their phones, because especially those country guys, because they like to talk back. And I think it was Doug Montgomery or whatever his name was like talking about, this is what we're going to do, guys, and blah, blah, blah. And all right, well, everybody, you know, get on that and have a great day. And then you hear this guy go, now tell me what kind of fucking day to have. And I look over, because at first I thought it was Steve, because that's something Steve was saying. Steve looked up too and looked around, looked at me, and I go, oops. And then you hear Doug Montgomery go, just a reminder, keep your phones on mute. And dude, I fell out laughing. So now even today, when people go, have a great day, and I'm like, don't tell me what kind of fucking day to have. And my wife looks at me like, what the fuck's wrong with that? You know? And I'm like, oh, honey, it's just a old radio bit. Same reason why I drew some titties on that dirty car. And that's Ron spraying the, those are bullets.
I was just going to say, Corey's starting to tell the truth, but he blamed me for that too. Hey, as we close here, I want from both of you, and we'll start with you, Jeff, your favorite memory of our time together, and then the memory that scarred you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you know, I think, honestly, I mean, I remember when we discovered that you could get the computer to talk? And you could type the words in.
Oh God!
Yeah. Okay. So Corey found a website that you could if you could type in, and it would read your text. It would go voice to text to voice, and some of the language that was made, it said. And, of course, the girls up front, you know, the Christian ladies and whatnot that are in the office, they're hearing everything. And there were actually a couple of offensive words on there that I said, Corey, what are you doing? Nobody says anything until he types in the word racism. And that's what gets us sent to the HR, is racism.
So that was your favorite. So a memory that scarred you, Jeff. Your turn. Go ahead.
You know, okay. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to keep it because it's mixed company, and I really don't know if my wife is going to listen to this or not. But let's just say that the dating pool in Fort Smith, Arkansas, was pretty shallow, And not going to say that Ron and I may have. I'm not going to say we're Eskimo brothers.
But we're Eskimo brothers.
We might be.
It was less this and more. Right? But yes, we are Eskimo brothers.
I think we are, yeah.
Tip of the cap to you, sir.
And I'm done.
Corey, you. Favorite memory that scars you?
That one right there scars me. I don't even want to know any more about that. I'm a changed man. I was keeping my stuff in my pants where it belonged. And plus, I had a rule where I wouldn't date women that had children, so I wasn't really trying to hang out at the.
Yeah.
Wasn't trying to hang out at the junior high school, you know. It just looks weird, especially with Brian driving that truck with them titties painted on there. Dirt. Oh my gosh. Of all of us together, or just my favorite memory of all time there? Man, you got the art. The wiffle ball was great. The catch I made, it was a catch of a lifetime right before we got yelled at.
That was a Sports Center top 10.
Yeah, you know, meeting the Subway guy like a month before the shit went down. That was a little interesting. Man, the favorite memory.
Man, how could I put the girls of the SEC and Playboy, the ones from how could I forget about that? Thanks, Corey. All right. Sorry.
Let me come back to the favorite memory. One of them that scarred me. The one that scarred me was I had been there a year, maybe 2 years. I don't know what it was. It was way too long at that point, and I was like, I'm out of here. And I remember, Ron, you're thinking, well, you can't leave me. And I was like, whatever. And I came home for, I think, Christmas break, and I met with, I can't remember his name, but he was the old GM of Q106 in Lansing. And we met at the Olive Garden. He's like, you're my dude, man. You're my guy. You know, we're looking for a program director. And I had talked with him over the phone, but met him in person. He's like, you're my guy. You know, we got some things that we got to secure up. Can't really talk about it, but March we'll be able to make the hire, and you're my guy. So look forward to it. And I'm like, hell yeah. So I come back and I'm like, yeah. And we only had like a very limited supply of really ugly station shirts to give away. I didn't give a fuck. I was throwing them all out. I'm like, I'm not going to be here. Merry Christmas. And Ron's like, what the hell's going on? You know? And so I told Ron, I'm like, look, man, I'm the fuckowski. You know, I'm out. I made it out, bro. Good luck to you. And you're like, fuck that shit. So you go in and you quit. You're like, oh, here's my 2 weeks. I'm out. Hook back up with this woman who I really loved, and I'm out of here, man. I don't need to be here, and I'll be goddamned if you leave me here alone. Which is exactly what Ron did. Then here come March, and yeah, because you left me there, and I was alone then, and
still feel bad about that. But to me, you the way you put it, that's not how I put it. Janice, who's my wife now, we reconnected because we were engaged years ago. To me, she threw a lifeline into a whole pit that I was in, and she helped me climb up and get the fuck out of there. That's why I look at it. So it's different perceptions, I'm sure. But no.
Yeah, you're probably on the phone with her like, I don't know what to do. Corey's going to leave me down here with all these people, and my Eskimo brother's already gone. And
you put that in my head. You were going to leave first just because I had an opportunity.
Yeah, you were like, you weren't waiting around for it, which is smart for you. And then March comes around, and then the change the dude was talking about was the station was being sold to a company who, guess what, didn't have GMs. So the dude that told me he was going to hire me didn't have a job. So there I am, stuck with no shirts to give away in Arkansas. And then thank God Steve Knoll came, because he was my buddy. He was another Yankee, so that did help me. But that was very scarring for me. And then I said F it and bought a house.
Yeah, that's when I really got concerned. When you were the only one of us left and you bought a house, I was like, he's going to die there. Yeah. Not only bought a house, but you got a cat.
Yeah, and I almost did die there. You know, and that's probably my happy moment. It was when I almost died. Because, I mean, it truly was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call for the drinking. And, my liver and kidneys shut down. Like, it was not fun, man. I was in the hospital for almost a month. But some could look at it as like, oh, that's one of the worst moments ever. But no, that needed to happen, for me to kind of get back on track to where, I really wanted to go. And a creepy thing, and this is probably one of the favorite moments too, is I was talking to my grandma one time in the studio, and she was telling me that she had talked to Jesus and God. And I'm like, okay, Grandma, what do you say? And she's like, well, he said that you're only there to learn these things that you're learning, and then you use them for God one day. And I was like, Grandma, I'm not working at a Christian station. Like, that's not going to happen. They put in my demo, it's going to melt their computer. Like, it's not going to happen. And she's like, oh, but he told me this. And now looking back at it, the stuff that I'm doing now with the nonprofit and 217 Recovery, I learned most of that there in Arkansas, the time that I hated, a time that I just wanted out of there, and like, even in those dark moments where we're not maybe at where we want to be at that moment, we're there for a reason. And, just to be able to do this with you guys today has just been a blast. I was so excited this morning when I woke up, and just to get us back together again. There's so many memories and stories that we forgot about or didn't even bring up, that we could just talk for hours and hours, but it's good to reconnect.
And that's a great segue into my favorite. Obviously, I've mentioned a couple of my favorites, so no need to rehash them, but I do want to talk about when I was first off, I loved the weather of Arkansas, but that really has not, well, I mean, it was better than Michigan. The winters weren't as severe, so I enjoyed that. But as far as the job, I was most pleased and I had the most fun when we were collaborating, mostly for Corey's show. There wasn't a lot of collaboration for me and Alex's show, but I remember you would ask us to do bits and this, and I always enjoyed that because I felt like we were doing radio. But ultimately, what I take on that as far as being fond of is the bond that we all created because we all went through that together. It was almost like the way I look at my brothers in the Marines. We all went through boot camp together. This is the same kind of thing. It was a very traumatic thing for three people being away from what is normal, what we thought was normal. But that bond, and as far as the one of my favorite, you mentioned Danae earlier, and this is one of my top 5 favorite moments. There was an event that we were all supposed to go to. I don't even remember the mall. It was like a mall, and we were supposed to go do this event. Well, Danae didn't show up. Me and Corey were there, and so on Monday, Dave came down from Fayetteville, and kind of gave Danae shit for not showing up. And then she came up with some excuse, went through this long paragraphic explanation, and at the end of it, Dave stops and says, I'm gonna stop you right there, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to start this conversation over again. And to me, to this day, that was the most gangster thing I've ever seen in my life. It was beautiful.
I still use
I look back at that. I do too. It's brilliant. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to start this conversation over again. And then the thing that scars me is just an accumulative thing that just made me question my own sanity and made me question my own common sense. To this day, I think about it. But to be honest with you, it was a good precursor, and it was a good training ground for the way we live now in 2023 because things have gone batshit crazy. I almost look at it like we're living Arkansas again.
Well, Arkansas to me was it was a working vacation. It was incredibly laid back. It was, we had a lot of laughs, and we learned a lot about each other and what we wanted to do or whatever. So I wouldn't do it again, but I'm glad we got a chance to be able to do it with. It wouldn't have been the same without you guys.
I feel the same way. Anything you guys, as we close out, I'll give you the final word here in a minute, Jeff, but anything you want to add, Corey?
Just that we didn't touch on the crazy events that would happen in Fort Smith. Like it's almost like Google Florida man, Google Fort Smith woman or Fort Smith man. You'll come up with the same stuff like when the guys slashed all of our tires in the parking lot. But I don't think you guys were there for that. Or the guy that was pooping on the yellow poles that are like outside of schools and Walmarts. He pooped on that and then had sex with it at Northside High School. Yeah, and I was like, oh my God. And I'm like, that's like 3 blocks from the house I bought in Fort Smith, Arkansas, because that's a great idea. And so I was like, my God. And I keep reading the story, and I was like, oh, the police knew who it was because it's the 7th time that he's done it. And I was like, wait, what? How does that happen 7 times? So like stuff like that would happen. And Steve and I, the other Yankee, would shake our heads and go, you can't top that. And then the next week, there would be something that would top that. The Denny's manager would lock everybody in and tell the waitresses to strip and be drunk those kind of stories, like we didn't really touch on, but yeah, Fort Smith as a whole was an interesting place, but there are good people there. There's some crazy people there. Ron, one of the stories that we didn't share was we were driving to get wings, and we see this man walk up to this woman and punch her. Like it's Sunday before football. And I was scarred, man. And I'm like texting Ron, like, dude, did you see that? And Ron's on the phone with one of his shooting victims or whatever you call them. And so like Ron's like, no, man. I'm like, dude, I was like, I called 911. And, because he just in the middle of the day just walks across the street and just punches her. I'm like, what the fuck? And he walks back. He's, of course, got, his mullet going, no shirt on, his tattoos, he jumps on the dresser that was on their front porch, of course, and then just sits there. And I'm like, I'm calling the police. So I call the police and I do that. And I talk about that story on the air the next Monday or whatever. And people are calling me, like my phone line's lit up even more than a contest. And people are like, you done fucked up, boy, hanging up. I'm like, what? And this lady kind of explained it to me. She's like, oh my God, when he gets out of jail, he's going to beat her even more now. And I'm like, where in the fuck am I at? Like, how is this? Like, I'm the bad guy for reporting it,
And that's to compound your statement is I don't think we could sit here and explain how bizarre it was, because I mean it wasn't the things you would see you don't see in the Midwest at all, right?
Oh no, God, no! It's an entirely different animal.
Well, what about you? Anything you want to say in closing, Jeff? I appreciate you coming on, man. What do you want to add?
No, like I said, it's been fun to sit back and have a few laughs over, the decision that basically killed my radio career. But, it was broken after that. But, in hindsight, I met my wife, and I've got a nice life here in Oklahoma. So, I mean, I can't complain. It was, where all of our lives have taken a different direction, and we didn't think, we weren't even thinking for the future when we were there, so it's now we're in different points of our lives, and it's worked out. But like I said, I'm glad we were able to do it at least together, and three guys who kind of had the same mindset, and we've got a bond, boys. we've got a bond.
It was definitely a ride. I want to thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. And like I said, we left a lot on the table, and I don't think we could sit here and talk forever. And unless you experienced it, you're not going to know what it was like. But like I said, it was a ride, and it was fun, and it was awful at the same time. But they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
Yeah. And I know you're trying to wrap it up, Gunnery Sergeant, so I'm not going to bring up Golden Corral or anything, but no, I remember one time, and I don't like to toot my own horn, but I did say something that was pretty funny, and you like spit food out of your mouth, and it was me, you, and Nastasha was there. We were eating lunch, and we had trade. Were you around for the trade days, Alex? They started letting us use trade.
Yeah, and I can remember sitting there and saying, okay, we have to go now because I have to go now. And that Golden Corral always turned me into a root beer fountain. But anyway.
But we could go there, and like we felt like we were big time, and we just sign and, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. But one time we were there, and this school walks in. I don't know if you remember this, Ron, of kids that were I probably shouldn't even say this because it's 2023, but kids that were on
the spectrum.
Oh, Ron, I don't know if you'd say that. I mean, that's pretty harsh. But since you said that, okay. And so they walk in, and Natasha looks up, and she's like, "Oh my goodness!" She's like, oh, "Well, where are all these kids from?" And I said, "Northside High School." And Ron like just spit out his like potato, whatever he was eating. He was just like, "Oh my God," because it was just such a natural reaction for me. Because why not? Why not the? Anyway, I guess that's not a funny story, but Ron, you thought it was funny at the time.
Just dawned on me. it just dawned on me that of the three of us, I went back to work part-time at JR before COVID. Jeff, that was your last full-time job. Corey had a full-time job for a minute, but he Charlie Sheened it out of there.
Dude.
And so, I think that station killed all of our careers.
No, it helped me.
Well,
it helped you? Well, did it, Charlie?
Hey, that was mental health issues that radio station wasn't equipped to handle. iHeartMedia, they were like, hey, man, go get better. Like, hey, this drinking thing almost killed you. Go get better. But if you had some crappy Midwest family radio station, then they'll tell you, oh, we don't know how to deal with this, so we're going to fire you. But we didn't fire you.
That's a whole nother show altogether. I think Corey, you're too good of a place to be delving into that. But I do want to say, Corey, you and I should plan a trip one of these summers and go see. I almost called him Alex again.
I've let you guys slide on it, for the last hour and 20 minutes because it's come up like 5 or 6 times. I should have kept a scorecard.
Yeah, but no, we should plan a road trip and go to Oklahoma and go back to the scene of the crime. Make a little production out of it. I think it'd be fun.
They've actually, as I said, I get back there every once in a while. They've moved to a much smaller facility now. It's actually in a nicer part of town. So there's been a little bit of expansion there, and they've widened some roads and paved over the dirt. But yeah, it's I didn't go in. I obviously don't know anybody there or anything, but it's a little bit of a different town now.
Well, one of my favorite quips that I still use to this day when something's busy, I always say that's busier than an Arkansas pawn shop at Christmas time. Thanks to Corey Winfield, Jeff O'Keefe, a.k.a. Alex Hart, and thank you for checking out Radio Dayz The Podcast. Today's show was brought to you by Team 71 Mortgage Group. Looking to buy a house or refinance your home and have questions that need answers now? Call Brian Alore, 810-444-6466. Today's show is produced by Ron Robinson Studios. If you need professional marketing videos or photography, headshots, maybe you need drone content, head over to ronrobinsonstudios.com. You can also hear previous episodes of Radio Dayz, the podcast there as well. And if you'd like to know more about the docuseries, you know where to go, ronrobinsonstudios.com. Thanks for checking out the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time.
You haven't lost a bit, yeah.
You can't go. All the plants are gonna die.